George Orwell's 1984. In this video presentation, I will be talking about how George Orwell made a totalitarian government completely control all society throughout this book. So, in George Orwell's 1984, the society in this story is completely controlled by a totalitarian government, and the government uses different forms of control to make sure they have 100% control of everyone. Now, before we get into all that, first I will give a brief summary of 1984. 1984 is about a man named Winston Smith and lives in a totalitarian government in London, England, within a party named Oceania. Now, in the novel, the party, called Big Brother, they control everything in Oceania. People's history, the language, everything they do. The party is also forcing and invented a language called Newspeak, which pretty much prevents political rebellion and even words that are related to it. So as I just said, the party controls everything in Oceania, right? So at the start of the novel, Winston shows his expression of how much he hates the party and just dislikes it a lot. He knows he doesn't have any free thoughts, expression of individuality, doesn't have any of that. So I'm going to briefly talk about Winston and what he does for his job. So Winston works in a place called the Ministry of Truth. This is where he alters historical records to fit the needs of the party. So Winston does not like his job as he's rewriting history, and he doesn't like that because he knows it's not right and it's not true. Another reason why he hates the party. So later in the book, he is fixed on a member of the party named O'Brien. Winston thinks that O'Brien is part of the Brotherhood, which is a secret group planning to overthrow the party, as he thinks. Also, what happens is Winston also meets a girl named Julia, and Julia becomes a love interest throughout the story, and they both talk about joining the Brotherhood and overthrowing the government. Now, the book ends with Julia and Winston getting caught, and they are betrayed by O'Brien. So O'Brien brainwashes Winston to love Big Brother, so the party, and he was tortured for that, and that's the end of the book. So now I'm going to talk about that idea I had earlier of how the government in 1984 has complete control over the society, and how the people have no say, have no freedom whatsoever. And so I'm going to explain how the government in 1984 used different forms of control to do this. Now, one of the forms of control that the government used was psychological control. Now, psychological control can also be known as psychological manipulation. So this means it is a type of social influence that is to change the perception or the behavior of people through deception or abusive tactics. Now, one of the ways the government uses psychological control over their society is when they have cameras set up all over the party, everywhere, and watching everybody's move and catching everything everybody does. Now, one of the quotes from the book is Big Brother is watching, as this means that Big Brother is literally always watching your every move in the society. So people are in fear, as if they get caught doing anything against the law, they're done and they can get thrown into jail or taken to room 101. Now the people would have to adjust to this and follow the needs of Big Brother. As shown, this is very effective and it keeps the people under control and in fear, so they would never disobey or go against the government. Now, the government in 1984, also known as Big Brother, uses psychological manipulation through propaganda. They use this as putting up many posters throughout the party and has many slogans. Now, some of the slogans are Big Brother is watching you, and another one is war is peace, freedom is slavery, and ignorance is strength. Now, these slogans are forms of propaganda for the party, making them seem good and not bad, but really they are bad because of the way they treat the people. And and the government has complete control over them. Now, another great example of how the government in 1984 uses psychological control or manipulation is when O'Brien betrays Winston and takes Winston to room 101, and that's where Winston gets brainwashed and manipulated by essentially the party, aka the government. So, as we know, O'Brien is part of the government, and O'Brien manipulates Winston to hate Julia. As we know, Winston had a relationship with Julia, and he loves her. But since O'Brien manipulated him to not love her, Winston is changed. As Winston says, "I don't care what you do to her. Tear her face off. Strip her to her bones." O'Brien here has psychologically manipulated Winston to hate Julia and love the party. Now, at the end of the book, it says he loved Big Brother. So Winston was psychologically manipulated to love the party, even though he really never did. You can see psychological control was very effective, as the government used it very well and had complete control. Another way the government used control over their society was through social control. Now, the government uses social control to control the society. So they do this by control of information, such as history, facts, and even events. Now, this is very effective for the government to be able to control something like this as history. No one would know what really happened before, but the party rewrites it and tells them what they want you to think, or what they want you to think that happened. Another example would be facts. A quote from the book, it says, "In the end, the party would announce that 2 and 2 made 5, and you would have to believe it." Now, we all know 2 plus 2 does not equal 5, it equals 4. But the people in the party don't know this, or they do, but they choose not to believe it, as 2 plus 2 equals 5, because that's what the party says, and that's all they know. It's another example how the party uses, or the government uses control, is through history. So one of the slogans is, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past," as says in 1984. So this is saying that the party uses a technique of false history, and so they feed them false history and make it seem really bad. And so they use that to make sure that people do the party's goals, to make sure they don't fall into that bad history they had when it's not true. The party just made that up. So, as the government used false history to use that as their advantage, as one of their slogans is, "Ignorance is strength." So they use the ignorance of the people in the party as their strength, and that works a lot to their favor. Now, another example of social control is language. So in the book, it's a thing called Newspeak, and Newspeak is the language of Oceania. Newspeak is designed to diminish the range of thought. Now, Newspeak really did diminish the range of thought in 1984. So this was to get people to think less and think of have their own ideas. And this went in the favor of the party. Now, one of the quotes from 1984 says, "Don't you see that the whole aim of Newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words in which to express it." This is said by Winston earlier on in 1984. Another quote that proves this point is, "You don't grasp the beauty of destruction of words. Do you know that Newspeak is the only language in the world whose vocabulary gets smaller every year?" Now, the whole goal of the party is to literally just eliminate thought. And the only thing they want them to think about is the government, Big Brother. That's who they want them to love. That's who they want them to practically worship. And if they're only thinking about Big Brother, then that's all they want. They want to eliminate your own thoughts. Now, my quotes from before easily prove that the government is trying to eliminate thought. For my last quote to help prove this is when Winston says, "Nothing was your own except a few cubic meters inside your skull." Now, this shows and proves my point of how the government used different forms of control on their society and how successful they were. As I showed this through my examples through psychological control and social control. And these show how effective these were and how powerful they were in 1984 and how useful they were to the government.